Greetings, I'm Dr. Sean Reed, author of The Dating Toolbox, available on Amazon.com. All right, so today I want to talk about getting back in the dating game after the age of 35 or 40. So originally this little mini lecture was going to be about older guys who've either gone through a divorce or gone through a series of bad relationships or have simply had no success with women. This discussion was going to be about older guys over 40 getting into or getting back into the dating game. But I also realized this lecture can be for anyone who has just been dumped. Or so this is for older guys or for guys that have been dumped. This lecture is going to be how you can successfully get back in the dating game and, most importantly, avoid ever being dumped again. Okay, so we're going to address these issues throughout this little lecture. Okay, so the three basic rules I have here is to get back in the game or to become successful, you must set goals, you must be systematic, and you must have rules. You must adhere to these basic three principles if you want to have success. What happens a lot of times in relationships, especially over the course of a marriage, guys throw all the rules out the window, okay? I'm kind of guilty of doing the same myself. 10 years into my marriage, I got away from all the rules and all the principles that made me successful, and my marriage started to get into trouble. That's when I went back and I revisited all my rules, and that's when actually I started to write my book about this. Once I got back into the rules, the principles, and the goals, once I got back into these once I became systematic, I became successful again, and my wife and my marriage has been extremely good since. Like I said, this discussion is mostly tailored to older guys, but it's also to younger guys. Let me give you an example. My example is my son, who's 17, he's about to turn 18. When my son was 15, I made him read my book twice. The reason I did so is I wanted to protect him. I didn't want him, I see all these 18, 19-year-old kids fall in love, they give up college, they give up their goals, they give up careers, and then the relationship ends and they're heartbroken and they have nothing. So I did this. I made my son read my book twice because I wanted to protect him. What happened is my son became a master with women. By the age of 16, he was sleeping with at least 2 different women a month. I could hear him, my room's right next to him, and I could hear him having sex with these girls. And so I started to think, well, gosh, maybe it wasn't such a good idea. I didn't really want my son to be so sexually active at the age of 16 or 17. But my son became a master with women. Now, what has happened is he got into this relationship. He fell in love with this girl, and he let all his principles go out the window. I saw this happen. Okay, he developed what I call one-itis. I just had a lecture on this. One-itis is when you become obsessed with one woman. You think that she's the only woman in the world for you. And what happened was his interest level got higher than his, and she dumped him. Okay, in about 2.5 months, he's going off to college. He's on a full ride scholarship at Iowa State. I'm hoping that he gets over this by then and that he learns his lesson. But that's why I'm saying this discussion can also be to younger guys. But again, originally this discussion was tailored to older guys who wanted to get back to the market. So the same principles apply. You got to set goals, you got to be systematic, and you got to have rules. Okay. So getting into this a little deeper, I see a lot of guys, they want to get back into the dating, so they start to look at literature in they start to look at academic literature, books written by psychologists, and therapists who are supposed experts in this field. And most of that stuff is garbage. You can't get good advice from academia. Why? Because they refuse to recognize that the female brain is different from the male brain. In the academic world, this was known as neurological sexism. If you argue that the female brain is different from the male brain, you'll be censored and considered a sexist. But the truth is, if we look at brain scans, brain imaging, MRIs, CAT scans, you will see that, in fact, the female brain is different from the male brain. So one of these principles we have to operate from is this fact that the female brain is different from the male brain. I have other videos on this topic. I can't get fully into it, but the truth is the female brain is different. The female brain is process oriented. The male brain is problem solution oriented. And when men are in relationships, they get into trouble a lot of times because they refuse to recognize this fact. Like I said, I can't really get into this and the things that you need to do in order to keep a process-oriented, i.e. a female brain, in love with you. I have other videos on that, but that's one of the principles, that's one of the rules behind my system, is you must understand that the female brain is different from the male brain, okay? And you also need to understand that dating is a numbers game. Okay, it's a numbers game, guys. So when we are returning into the dating market, we have to realize that we have to talk to lots of women. We have to open lots of women, right? My son, before he had a girlfriend, he had a list of 10 women he was engaging with on either through text messaging and social media. And that is one of the principles behind my system is you have to talk to lots of women. You have to have lots of options. That's why I tell guys, when we're getting back into the dating game, you need, whether you're young or old, you need to talk to a woman every day. You need to open a woman every day. You need to start a conversation with a woman every day. That's why I say we open 30 women a month. Now, I know that may seem daunting to a lot of guys. When you get started, you may not be able to do that just yet when you're new and beginning. But this is one of the rules. This is one of the goals. One of the goals, I talk about these three, the goals, systems, and rules. One of your goals early on is to start these conversations with women on a daily basis, okay? Another principle is, and this is probably the biggest principle of my entire system, this is the bottom line for all relationships. The woman must love you a little bit more than you love her, okay? When that's flipped, when you love her more than she loves you, that's when the problems really start. So really, I'm talking about the process, the brain imaging and white matter versus gray matter and all this complex stuff. But really, relationships come down to one simple principle. She must love you a little bit more than you love her. Okay, so another moving along, so we're talking to lots of women. Eventually, we're going to start to date lots of women, okay? A lot of guys struggle with this, but they think it's immoral or they think it's wrong. They're taught by society, a society which is the worst. Our modern culture is the worst for male-female relationships since ever. We were better off when we were cavemen than we are today. But one of the principles is you must date many women. Like I said, dating is a numbers game. And you're going to have to date, you're going to have to meet a lot of women, you're going to have to date a lot of women until you finally find one that is good for you, that is suited for you. And remember, guys, the dating process, it's a screening process. We're constantly screening. We're opening women to see if they're compatible. Do they talk to you? Can you have a good conversation with you? When you call them up or when you text them, do they accept your date idea or do they try and negotiate, right? See, if a woman is negotiating dates early on, that's a red flag, right? In my marriage, my first marriage, there were glaring red flags from the beginning, okay? On my first date with my wife, she's telling me that her friend borrowed her coat and didn't give it back and she wanted to kill her. Stupid me. I was clueless at that time. I didn't understand that was a massive red flag. So guys, we got to date lots of women and we got to recognize these red flags. Like I said, guys, we need to be systematic. We need to have rules. That's why we need to adhere to these principles, whether you're on your first date or you're 20 years into a marriage. Okay, so we're screening, and screening some more. We're always looking for red flags. and get when these women exhibit these red flags, guys, get them out of your life. Okay, so eventually we meet a woman that we're highly compatible with, and we stop seeing other women. Then we look for something I call the golden year, and this is where I'm going to get a dichotomy. I know a lot of older guys don't want to get married. The purpose of my system, personally, I wanted to find that really high quality woman that I was highly compatible with. I wanted to get married. I know some of you don't want to get married, but I guarantee that all of you would like to be in a relationship with a high quality woman that brings value to your life, that makes you feel good, right? That you enjoy being around. I think it's fair to say that no one does not want that, okay? And then from there, I get into other principles I have. Once you're in a relationship, you're doing two things. You're raising her interest level. You're also avoiding arguments, okay? I have whole videos on that topic. This video is starting to run long. I can't really get into that now. But right now, guys, I want to just repeat that getting back into dating, whether you're older or whether you've just been dumped, requires you to set goals, to be systematic, and to have rules. You need to be disciplined and keep integrating all these factors into your dating if you want to have success. All right, guys. Again, oops, I dropped it. Again, I cover all this in my book, guys. So for $13 or for $3.50, you can read it on the ebook version. All of this is covered in my book. So if you want a systematic guide to my program, here it is. If you enjoyed what you saw and you heard today, guys, please hit that like and subscribe button. Please comment down below. I'm happy to answer any questions, and happy dating.